Hello everyone, this is ProbableLoss and I am bringing you game number 16. Whoa, did not expect that 16 now, did you? Sorry about that name thing. This is sort of a bonus game. I'm going to cast it because the guy who sent it to me was only one guy. This was the replay that was, you know, hidden underneath a bunch of other files like I said in the previous video, I believe. And this is going to be between the blue Terran MelofSteel against the red ProbableLoss NMxSanYu in the top right. Later I will explain to you why I picked this game. The title looked like it was, hopefully it's pretty special. And yeah, that's about it. So, not too sure what to talk about at this point. Really not much else to really talk about other than my plans in the future. Still want to know from you guys, whoever watches the videos. I know there's a select few of you. Would you like to see more videos like this where I'm actually casting, or would you like to see more videos where I am casting ridiculous things? Like, I know a lot of people said that they enjoyed the cast that I did from the practice league from patch like 1.10, and a lot of people said they liked that because that just took them back to the old days, and I thought it did too. And yeah, in the cast, like, I was making fun of them. I was like, ah, look at him, he's trying to produce all of his units off of one barracks, one factory, and one starport. And I mean, when I think back to it, I was always trying to mass an arm. Like, I'd have 6 bases of mining workers and 2 barracks trying to get out enough marines to spend all my money. And then I would have like 8,000 resources, and I was like, yes, 8,000 minerals! I have the most minerals ever! No one will be able to take my minerals. It won't even matter because I have so many minerals. So, yeah, that happens. MelofSteel decides Vespene geysers they're for losers and never get them, ever. Especially if you're fast expanding. So that actually was a good idea. I kind of suspected that he was going to fast expand, but right now that marine, he's kind of upset at the probe, and the probe decides that life isn't worth it. After he's been shot a few times, his electric little probe thingies, they're all going haywire, and he just killed himself. Couldn't handle the stress. Marines on patrol. MelofSteel gonna lay down a bunker. This is really standard on this map for a Terran to fast expand, really in any matchup, just because the map's so big, and they can usually get away with it pretty easily, and even more so against Protoss because Protoss's units are so slow-moving, and Marines in bunkers can really deal with most sorts of pressure unless he pushes with something that was like Stalker Sentry and then Force Field at the back of the bunker so that he couldn't repair the bunker. But I doubt we're going to see that. It looks like SanYu is just going to go for a sneaky second, which I never know if it's going to turn out good or bad. The one good thing about it is the other player might get overconfident and think he's further ahead than he is. The bad thing is, well, one of the bad things is, of course, it's harder to cover. Another bad thing about it is worker transfer times, because you have to take these workers and go all the way up in here. And I am trying to make the camera as shaky as possible, yes, because that's good. We love shaky cameras. This command center is going to be morphing into a planetary fortress. I don't really know if that's all that necessary. That bunker is in a pretty bad location, though. Really, stalkers or even zealots can just be like, yep, what's up? Oh, look at this. There are workers back there. I'm going to kill them now. Back here we have SanYu getting up that base, starting worker production. I'm curious to see. He does transfer. And watch the income tab. Worker counts even. I'm sure there's a mule that's supplementing MelofSteel. But all of these workers. 8 workers are doing absolutely nothing right now, which is actually, it's a pretty big deal. So then I just want to show kind of the difference of whenever these workers start working as opposed to when they weren't. So it was down to about 500, and it immediately goes up to about 800. A little over 800. So yeah, he did spawn some additional workers while that was happening. This probe is going to go in and scout, well, try to, the planetary fortress. He was having none of that. So then, of course, you can see MelofSteel, when he transfers, he loses all of the income that he was previously gaining. But his immediately jumps back up. Although, I guess the mule just died. Why is his collection so slow? Oh, he has SCVs building stuff. That would explain the rest of it. So, SanYu just still working on saturation right there. Over here, he's sort of oversaturated. Scan going down and is going to see that there's very little going on. So, well, wait, what did I just say? MelofSteel scanning SanYu and sees that there's not all that much going on. It might think that something like a DT rush is coming, because this is honestly exactly what my base looks like if I am doing a DT rush as Protoss. I have very little units and a robotics bay because I prefer to drop them in via warp prism, but that's just me. Anyway, I'm going to get back into the game because no one cares what I do because I'm just platinum and I kind of suck at everything forever. I'm not sure what level play this is. I would assume it's fairly high because both players are doing fairly well on their macro. MelofSteel is sort of slipping, but he is getting out structure armor too, which is a very interesting choice. Probably one of the least used upgrades. And I want to say something about that. Structure, or Terran building armor. Thank you for that creativity. I mean, all of the other unique upgrades have some sort of awesome name. Like high-sec auto tracking. That's a thing. That's the thing that gives your missile turrets in your planetary fortress 1 extra range. But just Terran building armor. Why not like Terran reinforcing steel of awesomeness or something crazy like that? So gonna go into a little bit of theory craft here. I think putting this base here was actually a really good idea because MelofSteel does not have vision of that, and what he probably thinks is, well, he's just now getting this base up. That means that whatever this is probably some sort of heavy pressure that I can't see right now. So he has all of these defensive structures down. He's getting out siege tanks. He doesn't have siege mode yet, so not too sure what that's about. Doing a really slow Banshee cloak there. Okay, is just now getting siege mode out. But yeah, he's in a very defensive posture. I think what he's thinking is SanYu is probably going to put on some pressure soon. So he kind of took his own sneaky third. I'm pretty sure SanYu didn't see that yet. SanYu did not see that yet. MelofSteel laying down another 3 starports. Probably going to be all with tech labs. So this is going to be pretty interesting. This is what I was talking about. The replay is titled TVP Mass Starport, which I think is awesome. It's sort of a build that I knew Terrans had before that, but my bronze player friend actually approached me with the concept of this, and I had kind of already heard about it then, but like he explained it to me himself in the ways only a Bronze League player can, and it actually made more sense than I could have imagined. And talking about that being a bronze player who actually kind of knows about the metagame, I really think that this community needs to get out of the habit of blasting someone for being in a lower league. Like Platinum, yeah, I admit, I am awful compared to a lot of players. But the thing is, that doesn't mean I know less about the game than you. That just means I can't implement it as well as you, and I don't spend as much time playing it to practice implementing the build as you do. So it's kind of like a slap in the face to me to say, well, you're Platinum, so Why are you casting? I watch far more StarCraft than I have ever played, and that's how I like it. I would rather be a spectator than a player in most situations, because StarCraft, in all honesty, is a spectator sport now. And I really like the energy that I can get from the people. I really like casting because I can get that same energy as I would playing just by casting. And when I'm casting, I know that I can't lose because I'm casting. And who loses whenever they're watching a game of StarCraft? No one. Everyone wins when they're watching StarCraft. Except for the High Templar. They usually get EMP'd and then they cry a little bit. And then they try to form into Archons, but the entire army dies so fast because EMPs are good against Protoss. Sometimes, if the death ball's big enough, but there are no EMPs, luckily. What there is durable materials and the Corvid reactor, so Banshee, baby. Increases the starting energy of Banshees. Whoa. Return Seeker missiles and defense drones. Where's that army at? Right there. I am really anxious to see this engagement. I'm actually going to close the production. Well, I'm going to bring it up. When I see them moving out, I am going to close the production tab because this should be a pretty intense engagement. As far as this multiple Stargate build, or Starport build, I have actually done this a lot after my friend Theory crafted it. He had a little bit more. His was pretty much pure air. It didn't involve doing this at all. It involved going for such early Banshees that the other player would pretty much be forced to stay in their base long enough for you to get up a planetary fortress, which is exactly what MelofSteel did. And then the build also involved mass planetary fortress expanding to everywhere you could and then harvesting as much gas as possible at all times. Because normally you would have tons of extra minerals because, I mean, minerals are collected easier than Vespene, and Ravens are 200, 100, which is pretty big. And these are going to get shut down immediately. First, there's actually not Ravens coming out yet. He has them stacked up to build. But there is detection right here, so that will catch any DTs that try to swing around and do anything crazy. Right now, it looks like they're just going to be trying to deny expansions, which is good. SanYu is thinking the right mindset. Unfortunately for him, he's sort of not going to be all that prepared for what's to come. And yep, here comes this Viking shooting at the Colossi. Zealots doing pretty much absolutely nothing, and the High Templar don't do anything. The correct move is kind of what he just did, but it took him way too long to react, and SanYu just got shredded. I'm curious. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Starport is effective. I mean, you can just see what those Cloaked Banshees are doing. I'm pretty sure SanYu doesn't. He does not have an observer right there. That one thing about Banshees is they have some of the highest DPS towards ground units in the game. At least I'm pretty sure they do. So Banshees are really quite amazing if you just mix a few into your army. People, a lot of times, they like to say, well, they're just pure harass units. They're not just pure harass units. If you can mix a few into your army and they stay alive, they are dealing a ton of damage. Yeah. That's 26 damage in 1.25 seconds. That's a lot of that. For comparison, Stalkers deal 12 damage in 1.44 seconds. So Banshees are dealing a good bit over double that damage per second. The only thing is Banshees are relatively flimsy when it comes to actually taking damage themselves. Banshees don't have any natural armor. I was just curious about that. I don't know everything about the game all the time, and I apologize, but he does have that 1-1 upgrade, and is now working on the 2-2, and SanYu already does have his 2-2 up. There is an observer in here, but one thing that is good to note about this build, and one of its biggest strengths, is Cloaked Banshees can't be shot. Cloaked Banshees are revealed by observers. Observers are revealed by Ravens. Vikings only shoot air. Vikings will be pissed off at the observers, and Vikings will kill the observers. As you can see right there, due to sloppy observer micro, we just lost an observer. And might lose a third, I mean. He lost 2 observers right there, which is not good for him at all. So he is just throwing units away trying to break this, and you can see why I say that Mass PF Expand is so strong. You just see the Planetary Fortress going to work and throws down a ton of point defense drones. That is going to stop any sort of badness. Those point defense drones will not allow that Stalker Fire to do anything. Throws down more point defense drones. The clutch point defense drones. Ravens are so good in this matchup. Players need to... I think this build is just a solid build, and I actually think that the way MelofSteel did this was better than the way that I had tried to do this. And you can see, just probably going to get a bunch of orbital commands right here. I would imagine orbital commands. May actually go for PFs. I would go for a PF on this one, or maybe even a PF on this one, and then the rest orbital commands, or something so that you can get mules and scanner sweeps in there if you need them. But either way, if we look at the resources lost, it is just absurd in favoring MelofSteel. I honestly think that this is the way that Terrans need to start going to break out of that bio ball. Because right now, everyone, they just go kind of blind bio ball no matter what. And if it loses, then their immediate reaction is to say toss is OP. But I mean, watching this right now, sure, SanYu isn't doing everything he should be doing to counter this. High Templar counter this hard. But if MelofSteel, all he has to do is build a Ghost Academy and then put a Tech Lab on his barracks. And those ghosts pretty much make the High Templar do nothing as long as you're quick with those EMPs. So SanYu actually getting out Phoenixes, which are also really good against this build because all of the air units that he has are light except for the Vikings. And the Vikings will actually be the only things causing him real issues. So this is just very interesting play by both players. I want to check the income tab. 86 harvesters for SanYu and only 62 for MelofSteel. And to be quite honest, SanYu really needs that huge worker lead because his units are going to be very cost inefficient against the composition that MelofSteel has. One thing that I would do with this build more of is this harassment that you can see right here. Banshees are good harass units, as I said, and I know I said they're also good in an army, but if you can do harassment with them, then that's even better for you. So this is such a bad engagement. Those point defense drones are still all there and is just going to shred everything. All of these Ravens are still there. Another alteration that I would make in this build is to get Seeker Missile. If you throw down 2 Seeker Missiles and the player can't figure out which Stalker the Seeker Missile is locked onto, you can either force a retreat entirely, or you can maybe get lucky and have a Seeker Missile land in the middle of a Blink Stalker Ball, which is pretty big. I would say the most professional players would be able to pick out which Stalker is being targeted, but a lot of times you just see Seeker Missiles so rarely that players will either underreact or they will get confused as to which unit the Seeker Missile is following. I know I did whenever I was Zerg and I had a bunch of Broodlords and he fired a Seeker Missile at me and I was like, why is he firing a Seeker Missile at me? He must be stupid. And then he fired another Seeker Missile at me and my Broodlords were almost dead and I was like, how's that happening? And then he fired a third one and all my Broodlords died and I was like, well that's not good. I don't like that one bit. But yeah, Seeker Missile is pretty good. I believe they do 100 damage. They do. And that's in an area, so they're very effective against any type of balled up units. And Stalkers actually ball up pretty efficiently. This harassment has actually gone on for a really long time. I think that SanYu is just going to kind of let this fall because this technically was his second base. So really not doing all that bad on the 2 bases that he has right now. This one's starting to get mined out. He actually has this one nice and refreshed, which is really good for him. He did lose a bunch of harvesters, which again is probably good for him just to free up the supply. Although, whoa! High Templar. That was silly of you. Psionic Storm is really good against this build, just because air units clump up so much, but all MelofSteel would really have to do is basic micro. And the Observer is going to be way late to the party, but finally gets there and is going to pick these off. Still, units lost heavily favoring MelofSteel. To be quite honest, I'm not too sure if SanYu can pull out of this. I mean, this is just a scary looking army. 13 Ravens, 9 Banshees, and 10 Vikings. So once all of these units group back up, get all together, there really is not that much SanYu can do, especially with the point defense drones. MelofSteel can force SanYu to fight on his terms, which is definitely not a good position for SanYu to be in. So if SanYu wants to push, he just lays down 2 or 3 point defense drones, and suddenly SanYu, he can't fight in that location anymore. And he's just going to have to wait. And he has so many Ravens that it's pretty much going to be endless point defense drones, which are going to make him forced to fight through all of those point defense drones. And it's just such a solid strategy, especially if you can get to the late game like this. As I said, not too sure what SanYu can do at this point to counter him. High Templar, I said good. But SanYu doesn't really seem to be that interested in High Templar. And MelofSteel, I think, being that he knows how to do this build, he obviously has executed it before, probably is aware of the shortcomings of this build versus High Templar, and would know that building Ghosts pretty much makes this build extremely difficult to counter. Unfortunately, isn't going to get the cloak off on those Banshees, gets the cloak off. This is why he needs to keep that army group together. Oh my gosh, wow, I almost missed that. So this battle is happening up here, and these cloaked Banshees might actually hold this off. Those Immortals should be able to finish off that planetary fortress, but we will see. And SanYu is just bleeding here. Cannot take that auto turret. And still more full energy Ravens down there. And then sort of does what I said, 3 planetary fortresses and 1 orbital command just for that scan and those mules. Such a powerful build. Such an interesting build. I mean, it's very rare that you would see anyone do any build like this. To be quite honest, I don't think I've ever seen a professional league game where someone goes a build like this. And in the hands of someone great with Terran, I think that this build could become standard in the metagame. I mean, you can just see how strong it is right now. SanYu brings all of the probes off. It's time for an all-in. There's almost nothing that SanYu can do at this point other than all-in. Because this, I mean, this build is just so powerful. You can split up your units. The Protoss player can't split up his units. Because if he does, I mean, Protoss is very weak when split up. What are you doing, SanYu? Oh, man, you're just gonna say, oh, this is my base now. And indeed, he does. How many minerals are left here? 115. That is not worth expanding to. Don't expand there. Was anything mined off here? Maybe by some long distance? There was nothing mined off here, so this is a brand new base for SanYu. MelofSteel is almost double supply. So he's probably just going to gear up to do more of what he's doing right now. He's probably just going to go around and make sure that all of SanYu's base is finished off, and while keeping SanYu out of his base at the same time. MelofSteel had a little bit of problems earlier. You could see a lot of this stuff went down. And, oh, the Phoenixes are having a heyday over here. Might get a single Raven, but by trying to micro around that turret, he ends up not being able to focus fire down this Raven. And this Raven has 4 armor, which is... whoa. So that is only doing 12 damage per shot because he does that multiple damage. And all of these air units are going to have a huge advantage over his air units. So these Vikings are, well, should be able to take down the Phoenixes in a one-on-one. In a one-on-one, I believe normally a Phoenix will win. Not by all that much, but a Phoenix will win. Man, I am having some trouble with the scrolling speed here. But MelofSteel is shutting down one of SanYu's last bases. Shuts down the other one up here in this corner. SanYu trying to get his last 10 probes out of there. I just can't imagine what SanYu could do to get back into this game. This is just... I can't get over how strong this build is. I mean, this is entirely what happens whenever a Terran gets mass T3 units and you try to counter it with just Blink Stalkers. It's just not going to work. It's like saying that I'm mad because my Marines don't counter Ultralisks, which is, for some reason, a common argument in TVZ. I mean, they put down siege tanks, and they're like, well, siege tanks, they do bonus damage versus... I shouldn't get into a balance discussion. Yeah, just very little that SanYu can do. These point defense drones going to take up all of the damage that they could be doing. So just he's probably just going to throw point defense drones down the entire way until he can get those Vikings there to intercept. And once those Vikings actually intercept, there are actually no more point defense drones. He's going to lose quite a bit. But then again, he has no... Oh, getting the observer in there. Needs to bring one Raven back so that you can see... A little bit of miss micro there for MelofSteel, but I believe at this point it doesn't matter. If he had brought one Raven over to spot that observer and then just fired with the Vikings, they would have fired at the observer because that's the only air unit that they have. MelofSteel is going to come down here and he's going to say, oh no. And he's probably going to cry a little bit. That planetary fortress is like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing up here, boy? SanYu is just letting these Vikings die. Never good. Where's the PDD? PDD, there's the PDD. Luckily, Stalker shots are free. Throws down a bunch of auto turrets. Oh, that's kind of cool. Terran building plating. Gives extra health to these auto turrets. They actually get 7 health. So just very interesting playstyle here by MelofSteel. I mean, I've said that about 1,000 times, but I just can't get over it. Hopefully everyone who's watching this feels the same. I mean, how often do you watch a Terran player do this strategy? Although SanYu could get back up on his feet fairly easily if he just starts throwing down pylons and warp gates and stuff. He has the money to just kind of instantly spawn 12 or so warp gates, or however many he deems necessary. SanYu does have a lot of vital workers in his base, or MelofSteel does. But I think at this point he's not even expanding. I think he's just trying to find out where SanYu is to crush him out the rest of the way. And man, there's not that much to talk about here. How does an Archon take 6 whole damage and live? That's weird. I don't see that very often. So you can see MelofSteel is actually going to try to expand and cancels every single command center, which was not necessary at all. His whole army is only right there. But I think that's because he spots this base, and his first priority is to destroy the base rather than do anything else. Shouldn't be focus firing the Quasi. Needs to pick off the probes so that they can't do any more building or things of that nature. But that Colossi is fighting a losing battle there. He gets picked off very quickly by those Vikings. The Archons come in and they're going to get a lot of SCV kills until the Vikings come in. Again, Vikings, they're going to be pretty pissed. That Archon goes down. Does not get a single kill. And SanYu is just, his condition is getting worse and worse. These auto turrets are just doing a ton of damage. Hardly collected enough minerals for that to be... Well, he actually collected a fair amount. He collected enough for it to be worth it. But here he He only has 13 drones, or probes I mean, so he's not doing all that much work. And if he can get that pylon down, all of these units aren't going to finish warping in. They just barely finish. That was close. That could have been some pretty bad news there for SanYu. I mean, every unit that he can get warped in is going to be good for him. And kind of just, these are going to be throwaway Marines. He doesn't need them. Yeah, and the one thing about durable materials, look how long that makes the point defense drones last. Nothing, no battle can happen over here for, what is that, 4 or 5 minutes? I don't know. 240. I will do that math in my head while you guys make fun of me. That is 4 minutes, 4 in-game minutes of that thing being rude to any sort of attacking unit from the Protoss. Except for, you know, melee units, which there are very few of. And here come the Stalkers, and they are going to see point defense drones, which I'm sure they are not that happy about. And SanYu still has six probes and enough minerals to rebuild a Nexus, and I think SanYu is probably just really frustrated about how this is playing out. He probably hasn't really encountered this build before, because again, really, really rare. May actually pick off a good bit of these Vikings here, because Zealots are pretty good against these Vikings. And that point defense drone is like, nope, not up in here. And just look how much energy he has. These turrets, 4 minutes. So that is just solid play out of MelofSteel. Very happy to see that kind of play, and immediately withdraws most of his probes. Actually, all of his probes. He only has those 5. And oh, well,